long as the gravitational geometry of the solar system remains the same. That's to say, for the next 4 billion years or so, anything put there will stay there and will continue to rotate at that point in relation to the Earth and the Moon. And of those 5 libration points, the one that seems most stable of the 5 is called L5. It's the 5th libration point. And it's been calculated we can put several thousand space colonies in there. They can be as big enough to hold 4 million people each, or they can be small enough for 4,000. You can have towns and big metropolitan cities, and you can have literally thousands and thousands of them.
Is there any book on this, explaining all this?
The High Frontier by Jerry ONeill. He's a professor of physics at Princeton. This emerged from a whimsical mood one day. Went to give his class something new and hard to work on. He said, I want you to all write reports on the question, is the surface of a planet the best place for an expanding technology? And as the class researched it, they all came to the same conclusion. The best place for an expanding technology is off the surface of the planet in zero gravity. And L5 gradually emerged as the place most people interested in space colonies think is the best place to start. Heinlein is already writing science fiction novels in which people are complaining that L5 is turning into a slum and it's the dregs of the solar system and everybody's moving out to the asteroid belt. I think that'll happen in the next 40 years or so. I plan to be one of the first to move out of L5 to the asteroid belt, saying, they're letting in anybody else. Okay, next question.
Well, you seem to think that the space colony thing is going to happen pretty fast. Is that because you think the government might actually do something right with the development of it, or do you think that it's going to be private industry?
They've done something right already. They've started selling NASA technology to private industry, which means there'll be more and more tubes going into space competing with each other. Also, the Europeans have a good space program going. The Scandinavians are starting their own peace-oriented space program. It's called the Scandinavian Bypass Operation in their literature. Well, the idea is to create a colony in space that will beam down solar power cheaply and sell it all over the world at low prices, which will make Scandinavia even richer than it is, and undercut the monopolies that presently exist and benefit everybody, and invite the United States and Russia to cooperate in this. The idea is to get the United States and Russia cooperating in peace for uses of space instead of Star Wars scenarios. That's why it's called the Scandinavian bypass. It's supposed to bypass Star Wars and bring us into Star Peace. I don't know if the Scandinavians can do it, but there's so many other people with space programs, including India. Gandhi is absolutely bonkers about space. India has more satellites up than most of the European nations, even though we think of it as a backward country. So I see the next 40 years there's going to be dozens and dozens of space colonies started. As Tim Leary says, the lesbian vegetarians will have their own utopia. I'm going to be in the first anarchist colony. Yes?
Do you look into water as well, say the next, 25 to 50 years, as progressive last under ocean? So what's current on that level? We can jump bodies instead of those ships.
When Arthur Clarke comes to Phoenix, ask Clarke about underwater habitations. He's thought a lot about that. He's written a few novels about it. He's written a few scientific papers about it. He's fascinated with the whole exploration and colonization of the undersea world, but I don't know much about that, so there's no sense in my talking about it. Wait till you get an expert on that here and ask him. I don't know. Try see if you can persuade him to come here.
Sri Lanka.
He can't spend his whole life in Sri Lanka
But Jesus is
just enjoying the beautiful climate and the dancing girls and the food that falls off the trees.
Is there a mountain in Sri Lanka that's sacred to 5 religions? 4 religions?
Something like that. Yeah.
Let's make it 5 religions.
That's where Jesus is.
He's living in the slums of London.
Yes.
What about the notion, Leary's new notion of the computer age as being a portion of the expanding space side of that triangle? That one of the frontiers we're off to explore now as well?
Expanding space. I've always thought of that as expanding consciousness, expanding space too. Yeah, there are different kinds of space. The space in computer games and networking and so on is a very weird space. When you do the computer networking, space tends to disappear. Time shrinks and space disappears. I don't know, I gotta hear Tim talk about that subject debate. Maybe onto something very important there. He often is. Yes?
What did you think of Gibson's cyberspace Rorschach? Neuromancer?
Oh, Neuromancer, I haven't finished that yet. I'm reading it right now. I think it's a terrific book, but I haven't encountered cyberspace yet. Yes?
What is meant by the term cyberpunk? I've read that several times in back and forth language, coming across theory, across literature. What does it mean?
Does anybody want to answer that? I'm not sure.
It's a new movement of a lot of the young science fiction writers, especially when based in Boston. People like John Shirley and Bruce Sterling and William Gibson, and people who have come through the drug revolution and are interested in a lot of stuff that might exist below the surface of some of the traditional science fiction universes. The subcultures of drugs and what people might do with computers in a criminal situation or a sub-legal situation. It tends to be fiction in which governments have very, very little power as opposed to corporations, which is one of the things Tim Leary has to talk about, is how the emphasis is very much switched. The corporations are publicly perceived as having radically more power than the government.
Yes.
How are we going to be able to wrest away control of these anti-aging drugs from all the people that once they spend all the money to develop them, they'll try to keep them from people who deserve them most?
Makes it affordable for everybody.
Well, that I think is the major intelligence test of the next 40 years. Are you going to be one of the people who gets them or not? That depends on how smart you are, I would think. I've covered my bets by getting to know most of the leading researchers on a friendly basis, giving them publicity, helping them get funding. I think they're all grateful to me. I have no worries about being left out when the breakthroughs occur. You got to find your own life script to solve that problem.
Well, we all know you can.
I think what's going to happen with life extension technology is what happened with the automobile. At first, they're going to sell very valuable serums to the very rich. And then somebody like Henry Ford is going to say, hey, I know how we can make this cheaper and sell it to everybody. And we'll make even more money that way. And then you'll have your Model T life extension serum appearing in every drugstore.
And we'll have to have space migration because we've got elbows and people.
That's right, yeah.
Well, this planet can support like 40 billion people if we allocate their resources.
Can you imagine the whole planet?
A lot of people.
Tokyo.
Anything if you're comfortable, we can do it.
A lot of people I talk to, I mentioned that idea, geez, I'd like to live to be 300, 400 years old. A lot of people I talk to are like, I wouldn't want to live that long. It would be boring, I'd get old. I don't want to be old. I don't want to be old and sick.
That's the idea. Live that long and healthful.
Yeah, well, that's what I think.
Well, this is a genetic winnowing process. The neophiles will survive. As people who love novelty and never get bored and are always looking for something new, they'll survive. They'll not taking each incremental vitamin, serum, drug, whatever it's called, a machine that comes along to extend lifespan, and they'll go on extending lifespan indefinitely. And the neophobes will say this may be dangerous, I might get bored if I live too long, it's against God's will, and they'll
There
all
are things
die
man
off.
was not meant to know.
There are things man was not meant to know, and they'll all die off. And I think the world would be much better without them. They don't even break on progress, and they usually staff inquisitions and so on. So I think this is one of the major genetic shifts in evolution. We're finally going to get rid of all the dead ways. I'm sure Pat Robertson will take life extension. That's obviously against God's will, so we'll get rid of Pat Robertson while we go on being, I don't really expect I'm going to go on being 56 forever, or 58, or 60. Whenever the technology arrives, it will include rejuvenation, because there's a lot of evidence already that you start jiggling with the genetic code, you're going to get rejuvenation rather than stasis. So you get periodic rejuvenations. And I expect to spend the next couple hundred years at around the age of 25. Leary tells me that shows I'm basically a conservative. He wants to be 18 for the next several years. My feeling is I'd rather be gored by a rhinoceros than relive my adolescence again. Leary had a happier adolescence than me, I think. Yes?
Why did you go to Ireland originally?
For sentimental reasons. They don't tax writers there. I'm sentimentally attached to my money.
What made you want to come back?
I kept getting offers from Hollywood till I finally made an offer I couldn't refuse.
Can you go into that a little bit? Tell us a little bit about what the project might be?
Well, your movie.
It's considered bad luck and bad form to talk about work in progress in Hollywood.
Unless you're on the Johnny Carson show. Unless you're on the Johnny Carson show.
At that point, they're ready to release the it's about to go into the theaters. They don't talk about things in production as a general rule. Things get ripped off if you do. That's one reason they don't talk about it. There's also a traditional show business system of divination there. The belief is if you talk up something in production, something will go wrong and will turn into a turkey. That's like you never wish an actor good luck on opening night. You're supposed to say break a leg. Well, that's another reality tunnel, the show business reality tunnel. And now it's now we have gleaned the world. What's the word I'm looking for? We have somehow progressed from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and our show is about over. What was the word I was looking for?
Wild wing, you know.
Wended. We have wended our way from 10 of the clock to 5 of the clock. I hope you got your money's worth, and now I'm entitled to take the rest of the day off, which I plan to do. Thank you all very much.
Okay.